Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. How are you doing tonight? It's Robert here, your resident Gen Xer. John over there, our resident millennial. How you doing tonight, John?
I'm doing fantastic, as always.
John, of course, running a little bit late because he was trying to do his makeup. As you can see,
Yeah,
didn't help.
no, doesn't usually, but one can try.
So, how's your week been, John? How's your whole thing going on this week?
It's been
It's been what?
it's been going.
Yeah, it's going.
I'm still here.
Yeah. Has government taken away all your rights?
Not quite, but they're trying.
Yeah. Are they? Are they really, John?
They are, yeah. I mean, if you want to get into that discussion, we can.
We could get into that discussion. I don't mind getting into that discussion. We'll get to that later. We'll have some stuff to talk about.
Yes, we
Maybe we'll talk
will.
a little bit about rights. We've got a few things to talk about tonight, John. I don't know if did we talk about this off mic a little bit? I think we talked a little bit. It acted like we were doing a little show planning, right?
Yeah, we'll pretend.
So yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about tonight. We had a little update in the Jesse Smollett case, very
Yep.
quickly too, I must say, and talk a little bit about that. And it kind of relates from a hate crime standpoint to another little blurb we're going to talk about. Happened down in South Carolina, which is just, I don't know. I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But we're also going to touch on a new travel policy that's going to be going into effect for a lot of the EU in a couple of years, which I think is kind of interesting. And we've got a little bit more to talk about. Let's see, what do we find? Oh, journalists. Found out we might have some watchful eyes on our journalists, but we'll see. I'm not sure how far slippery slope this is. But this is one of those things that impacts new media as well. So I think it'll do some justice to talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
We'll talk a moment about the border wall. Got a little bit of I saw some money wrangling, some talk about how some of the money is going to be wrangled. I thought it was a little bit interesting how they were going to deal with that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about one of John's favorite subjects. John, you've got
Yeah.
guns. More guns.
Guns. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, John likes his guns.
Coming again to save the motherfucking day, yeah.
Yeah.
America.
Love your guns, don't you, John?
Fuck yeah.
How many guns are you on?
Technically, none.
All right, then. Good to see you love your guns, John. So you
Yes.
stick to your guns, and
That's right.
we'll touch on that a little bit later. There's nothing more than somebody who wholeheartedly supports guns and owns none.
Yeah, it's more about principle than anything else.
Is it? You
Yes.
think all principals should have guns?
Yes, all principals should have guns.
I've met some crazy fucking principals.
Yeah, you met those fucking snot-nosed little entitled shits.
No,
The
no,
kids
that's
I'm talking about.
I see what you did there, and I find it
Yeah.
hilarious. I'm going to go with hilarious on this, and
Good.
you back me up. As long as we tell our viewing audience that we're hilarious, guess what, John?
If you tell somebody something enough, they might start believing it.
Well, yeah, I believe that's true. It's about mind training, right? You have to train
That's
your
right.
mind. Whether it's
Pavlovian
ours.
style.
Isn't it interesting how if you are telling it to yourself, you're training your mind. If you do it to somebody else, it's brainwashing.
Yeah, I guess it's a voluntary effort there. It's a consent issue.
So, John, anything? So you just had a blank slate this week, right? Nothing major going on. Like it's really not been a major news week, right?
It really hasn't, yeah.
Um,
I've seen some like minor stuff. I sent you the one article about
yeah.
the supposed hate crime in South Carolina.
One thing that we don't have lined up to talk about in the show, but I'm going to throw it out there. Paul
Yeah.
Manafort, I mentioned this to you off mic. Paul
Right.
Manafort was facing 25 years and wound up only getting 47 months.
Yeah, he won't do anywhere near that amount of time either.
Well, and it's funny you say that because a lot of people think that same way, right?
Hmm.
And so my question is like, shouldn't they? Like if
Yeah, of
you're
course.
facing 25 years and you got out of there with only 47 months, I'm thinking there's no early release. There
Yeah, I
should,
mean,
you know,
I don't agree with it. I'm just saying that that's how it
you.
works.
But I mean, what would get him out of there? So will he have like some sort of early release? I mean,
Yeah, I
is
mean,
this
he's a made man. Yeah, of course.
does a term like that carry a possibility of parole?
It does if you've got influence and money. That's all it takes.
Is that all it takes? So
Yeah,
is that what Cohen's going to do
it's
with
like
his
it's
three
like in the
years? Is
old.
he going to get out of there too?
It's like in like the like during feudalism in the medieval ages. You could you can kill as many people as you want as long as you paid your tithe to the bishop. You bribe the bishop a little bit, and he'll get you into heaven.
Yeah.
Same kind of deal. No, there's no justice.
So then here's your question. I just asked something about Cohen. I don't think you heard me, but like, well, do you think Cohen will manage to pull the same thing with his 3 years?
Yeah.
Get out of that early?
Oh yeah, he's not going to serve 3 years. No way.
So
Yeah.
here's a question for you then. Let's look at it. From a hypothetical standpoint. Still, since both of them are getting prison terms, would it have been a smarter move to not roll on the president like both of them did? Basically, right?
Would
It's
it
like
not be a smart move, or would it be a smart
would
move?
it have been a smarter move to not roll on the president, thus pretty much guaranteeing that you would get the pardon?
Well, I mean, so I think the strategy behind doing that is to get favor with the American people and the media, especially, as
Yeah, it
opposed
was to get a
to,
lesser sentence.
well, yeah, and I mean, obviously he was going to anyway, but yeah, he was obviously going to get a lesser sentence with that. But I'm saying in general, rolling over on Trump will win you favor with the media and with the American people at large.
Well,
And so there's that. So once you get out, you can write a book about how shitty Trump is, and you can make a bunch of money.
well, I don't know. When you say with Americans at large, but do you think Americans at large want people rolling over on Trump? Do you think there's a
Well, it's
majority
exciting.
of
I
people who
mean,
would rather see Trump exposed and taken out of
yeah. I mean,
office?
it's bread and circuses. It's entertainment. It's drama.
Because his numbers are
People like
going
that.
up if you hear
Yes.
if you hear
Yeah.
the stories correctly, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there that much impetus for people
He's actually
who?
got the highest. I forget where I saw this. He's got the highest approval ratings of recent presidents, like since Bush. So Bush and Obama had less approval ratings than he does.
How much?
And Congress is at its lowest point, and I don't even know how long.
How much do you think? How much impact do you think he has on those polls
How much impact does
or
he have on the
influence?
polls?
Influence.
Influence? I
Yeah.
don't think so because the media is like just ridiculously against him. The
Yeah.
media is absolutely against him.
I just always
So yeah,
I always question the validity of that. I mean, without asking the American people as a whole, I mean, his approval rating. I mean, you're still going on a sampling.
yeah, but what you do is you take a bunch of polls and you use like an aggregator. So you use, something that takes all the polls and uses their information and makes its own, percentages based on all the available polls.
So you use an aggregator to determine how people feel about the aggravator.
Right,
Nice.
exactly.
All right, I like that. I see how that works. Not that he aggravates everybody, but he makes me gulp sometimes.
Yeah, I can see that.
It kills me. I swear to God. I keep, I keep sitting on that fence where it's like 1 minute I'm like, okay, maybe he's not doing too bad, and then back over to the other. Oh God, we need to get the orange
Yeah.
guy out of office,
Well,
right?
that's what it. Yeah, I mean, it really depends on, what kind of polls you're using, who's doing it, what the methodology is.
Yeah.
So that's why using an aggregator is important because you kind of get a
Gotcha.
much better picture.
Well, it's and it really so am I correct that when they do those polls, it's really more about public opinion, right? It's the public opinion polls that they're
Yeah.
using, right? It's basically what it
Hmm.
comes down to. Which is, I guess, from week to week just flips, right? I mean, next week his approval rating could go down. I mean, it depends on how often you're
Yeah,
doing
it
them,
just
which it
depends.
does seem like they do them pretty often. I wonder if I'd love to see the data on how often they do them. Maybe here's our stat guy. Tenchi, we should
Yeah.
give Tenchi a wrench. He's our stat guy. I like that. He's
No, he
pulling.
doesn't get a wrench. No, I'm just kidding. Well, maybe. Maybe I'm not. We'll
So
see.
he says Obama started at around 60%, which is not surprising. Most presidents start off pretty high early in their administration anyway, or
Yeah.
high, decent
Right.
numbers, and ended
Ended
around
at 45.
45%. Um,
Trump's at 41% right now, but according to 538.com, which I'm familiar with. I've seen that before.
well, that's that's
Let me see.
that's according to the time now. That site's over 3 hours old.
Yeah, it could be completely different.
Because it's
Yeah, 41.8% approval. But I mean, let's see what their methodology is.
they ask their grandma.
Yeah.
Grandma, what do you think about the orange man? What?
Okay, yeah, no, it is an aggregator, so that's pretty good.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
It's important to have an aggregator to determine
it
how much
is.
people like the aggravator.
Yeah, hilarious.
I'm probably going to make that reference again.
I hope you do.
I like it. I like the way it feels rolling off the tongue. Um, so, speaking of public opinion,
Hmm.
Jesse Smollett.
Yeah. I wonder what his approval rating is right now.
Right? Well, his case went before the grand jury so that they could decide the charges that are going to go against him. So, and for anybody who doesn't understand how the legal system works, it's basically the grand jury. I guess in a more layman's term, they kind of approve the charges that are going to be brought against him, right? Before he goes to trial. So Smollett goes before the grand jury, and they return 16 felony counts against him. Now, I haven't seen anywhere where they're all listed out, right? But the first arrest was a felony, 16 felony counts against the actor for falsely reporting a hate crime attack against him in January, and ultimately that was what they had originally arrested him for, right? Was a false report.
Hmm.
But now it's 16 charges. The grand jury returned the disorderly conduct charges on Thursday. He is scheduled to be arraigned on March 14th. The specific allegations, false report of offense, are Class 4 felonies. They claim that he knew at the time there was no reasonable ground for believing that such offenses had been committed, according to the indictment. The counts focus on allegedly false statements he made to two different police officers. Each count covers various alleged acts that Smollett falsely described to the officers, including that he was hit by the two men, that they yelled racial and homophobic slurs, and poured a chemical on him. The grand jury decided he told multiple lies. They were going to charge him for each lie he told. If you have a crime and that crime has multiple parts to it, you charge all those separate parts.
Yeah,
Originally,
that is
it
how
was
that works.
one count of disorderly conduct for allegedly staging a racist and homophobic attack was what he was originally charged with last month. So, 16 counts. Now, if I'm not mistaken, because I don't think, this report doesn't say who the judge was, but the original judge he faced was an African American judge.
Mm.
Now, here's the question. And it's just one of those questions that comes to my mind. If he was before a white judge, would a white judge be just as harsh? And
I mean, it depends on the judge, right? I mean,
Well, I think him having an African American judge, the first judge that he went before when he was first arrested, basically told him he was a despicable person. That's, paraphrasing.
yeah,
But to do what he did, to perpetrate those kind of hate acts falsely, he was pissed. Now, if he got this, if it's the same judge, I can understand why he threw the book at him. He was
yeah,
appalled by the fact that Smollett used a noose, and all this shit.
oh yeah,
He was like really pissed off. So,
yeah.
there you go. Now, his attorneys still claim that he's innocent.
He's got to,
which
yeah.
means they're going to take it to trial. No,
Right.
if he can plea out of this, it's going to be the smartest thing for him. They have enough proof. They've
Yeah.
got the evidence they need. I mean, if you're facing this, I mean, it is general public opinion that this guy fucking lied and staged this.
Yeah.
Anybody that's read about this case or kept up with this case will say the same thing.
I mean, his
Why would
attorney
you
must think he
continue-
can. His attorney must think he can get him to at least drop a bunch of the charges and get a lesser sentence. Otherwise, he would just have him plead guilty
Well,
or do some kind of plea deal.
here's the thing. My real thought is he can't prove a negative. If he lied to cops and that's a felony,
Hmm.
how can I mean the only way to prove he didn't lie is to prove that the attack was real. That's just the only way you can counteract lies to a cop.
Yeah, you'd have to prove that it actually happened.
Yeah.
But that's not proving a negative. Proving a negative would be saying that you would prove that it didn't happen,
Okay, is that
which they've pretty much already done.
Was I looking at it in reverse? Like
I think so.
he's got to prove that he didn't lie. So that's okay.
Right.
Yeah, I did say it in
That's
reverse. I just really wanted to use that term. No, so he's got to prove that he didn't lie to the cops. He can't do that if there was no real attack. So why in the fuck would you even stand on innocence? Why would you even bother trying to go to court and fight
Well, see,
this?
I think it's just because apparently his attorney probably thinks that he can get him on, get some of the charges dropped, and get him on lesser charges, which will then, prove for a lesser sentence than you would get with a plea bargain.
I don't think there's a judge that's going to let any of this go. I don't think there's a judge out there that would let this go. Not in this day and age. Not high profile like this.
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah.
I don't
know. I mean, people said the same thing about, OJ's trial. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Yeah.
I mean, he got off.
I don't think it's as high profile as that.
No, this guy's no OJ.
No. But I mean, looking at that, you never really can tell what they're gonna do.
I mean, who knows? He might whip out a the white Bronco. He might whip out a white Bronco between
Start
now
making
and
his
the
way
trial.
to Mexico.
Right. But that would be funny. That would be.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome if he tried to escape to Canada or something.
Or if he just showed up for court in a white Bronco. That would just be cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Wearing leather gloves.
Naturally.
That don't fit right.
Right, he's going like this, like it doesn't
He's
fit. I don't
still
know
going to
why.
be trying to pull the noose thing. Remember we mentioned that? Like, I can't get this noose around my neck. If it don't fit, you can't lynch.
Wow.
But anyway, so now the next thing, the thing that you brought to me that we're going to talk about that happened in South Carolina kind of runs in this same vein. The mayor of South Carolina says that there was a yellow sticky substance on her car, was sprayed on her car by vandals. But the police have a different story with that. So basically she had gone out of town, she had gone somewhere out of town, and she had come back. And her and her husband's car, her husband went outside and noticed that her car was yellowed. He's like, something's been sprayed on your car, and it was on his as well. And so they're all freaked out. She immediately thinks to herself, it's a hate crime. And she even says, she's like, what was it? She said, I likened it as a hate crime because, number one, there's a history in our town of Lamar. Oh, she's only a volunteer mayor. Wow,
Yeah,
they
it's
have
some kind of like
980 people, so they have a volunteer mayor.
yeah. Yeah,
I'm sure
small
she's
town.
doing a great job. Anyway,
Yeah. She's never seen pollen before, apparently, living in South Carolina. Never seen pollen before.
well, that's just it. The police investigated. The police checked this out, and they came back and said that the residue was pollen. That there was no reason to collect a sample, and she was upset. She's like, we don't have a sample of it because they pressure washed the car twice, so they don't have anything to investigate. They don't have a sample of it to investigate.
Yeah. Pro tip: if you have pollen all over your car, don't wash it. Just wipe it. It'll work a lot better. Promise.
Yeah.
Doesn't get sticky. If you just wipe it, that's all you gotta do. Don't use water. It'll be there forever.
So, but she goes on talking about how she still feels that this was some sort of hate crime.
Yeah, those evil bees, just going around spreading their hateful pollen. Just nothing you can do about it.
Of course, she's African American. She's a volunteer mayor. This is her, and she's she looks a little bit like Oprah Winfrey from The Color Purple.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I'm just mentioning that. It's just popped in my head. But anyway,
Yeah.
this is this is the kind of thing. It's like, okay, I can look at her and see she should be old enough to have fucking seen pollen on cars.
Right.
She looks like she might be old enough to have seen pollen on Model Ts.
Looks like she's old enough to have actually seen what racism looks like, and it doesn't look like pollen on her car. Like, sorry, no, thank you. No, it's not.
South Carolina is a pretty vibrant state when it comes to flora and fauna, agriculture, and I would say the Southeast is kind of experiencing somewhat of an early spring. Like, we didn't get a freeze at all here in Florida this year.
It was kind of chilly yesterday.
But I don't believe we dropped below freezing at all this year. We didn't, because my wife's got plants. If there was a freeze, we would have been covering plants.
Huh, okay, fair enough.
We didn't do anything. There was nothing. The closest we got were some high 30 temperatures. I mean, it borderlined 39, 40. I think, I don't even, no, not even early in the season. I mean, shit, last year we got one freeze and one frost. But I don't think we even got a frost this year. So
yeah, Florida kind of sucks though. I don't know if I want to go into something real quick because I don't count Florida as the South. Like, I understand that it's the southernmost state, especially in the Southeast, but like culturally, I don't see it as South.
Culturally, no.
Unless you get like towards like the Florida, Georgia like line, you might see some rednecks up there. You might see some southern culture up there, but
right
everywhere else in Florida, no, it's not really like that.
But I would hazard the supposition that Florida is deeply rooted in the below the Bible Belt in the South, from the standpoint that up until the last decade and a half, maybe 2 decades, it has primarily been a hardcore Republican state that follows many of the same values as the Bible Belt states do. All these southern states below the Bible Belt: Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi.
Do you happen to know when it became a battleground state?
I believe Clinton, was it Yeah, I believe during Bill Clinton's 2 terms, those elections were when we started seeing a shift in Florida, because I know that Florida was much more contentious in his for his second term, if I'm not mistaken. But when it
Hmm.
came to George W., Florida was it was all
Yeah, I knew that.
Florida was good to go. But it has since gotten more
Well, no,
contentious.
Florida had to do a recount during that election.
Oh, that's right. Well,
That was
wait, it was
the first like big
Clinton.
recount that we've had in recent
I'm
memory.
trying to remember my order. It was Clinton, then Bush,
Then Bush, yeah,
and then
Bush Jr.
Obama.
and then Obama, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it started flipping during Clinton, but with Bush, yes, that's when it was even more contentious, because we had to have the recounts because he was going up against Al Gore, and Al Gore should have won.
He won the popular vote, but did not
Right,
win the electoral
right,
vote. Right?
right.
Yeah.
Which I'm that old school mindset that or I feel is old school, that if you win the popular vote, that's the American will of the American people, right?
Yeah.
That's telling
Yeah.
you. The number of votes tell you. Now, of course, yes, the broken electoral college is going to come in and swank those numbers. And we've seen it again here in 2016,
Right.
well, across the country. But, yeah, but now nobody knows which way Florida is going to go. Like, especially, 2020 is going to be a real teller,
Yeah.
as how Florida swings. But I have a feeling that for that election, 2020, it's going to be more like it was before it started becoming a battle state.
You think it's going to go red?
I think more people in Florida are going to be pro-Trump than
I can see that.
pro-Democrat.
We have a lot of retirees, especially retirees from New York here,
Hmm.
and so they'd be more likely to vote red. I think.
But see, now I used to no, that's what it used to be. You used to could
Yeah,
count on that,
with
but
the
you don't.
snowbirds
But the
and
problem, the difference now. I won't say the problem. Sorry, I won't use that word. That's not what I mean. But the problem for Republicans is ultimately what I'm trying to say is the large influx of Hispanic Americans, Cubans, Puerto Ricans,
in
all
Florida. I mean,
throughout
it's been
Central
pretty
Florida and
standard.
lower. Well, no,
It's been
it's
pretty consistent.
in the
I don't
last
think has it increased.
in the last 25
Hmm.
years, I have watched the
Oh well, yeah.
population of Orlando grow with a
Hmm.
larger percentage of Hispanic Americans, Hispanic speaking
Yeah,
Americans. So,
Hispanic speaking.
and I say that, well, I mean, Latino. I hate using that term, but that's the Latino vote. So the Latino vote is what
Hmm.
is making Florida, I believe, the swing state that it is, the battleground
Makes
state,
sense.
because now it's
Yeah.
not just, it's not relegated to Miami. That's, Little Cuba was where it all started, but now that's spread upwards, and now all the way up to Central Florida, you're seeing a lot bigger Hispanic community,
Yeah, we've had a
Latino
lot of Puerto
community.
Ricans coming here.
Sure. Yeah.
And the thing is, it'll be like one or two of them will come over, and then they'll bring their family, and then, their family's family. So like, someone's wife will bring, their family, and they'll live together. Um, so I mean, yeah, I can see that, and they're American citizens, so they're able to,
Hmm.
move freely. They don't have to worry about, border like border incidents or anything like that. They don't have to worry about getting a citizenship because they already have it. And then once they get here and become a citizen of Florida, they can vote.
And traditionally, from a political
Wait, can
standpoint,
they vote in Puerto Rico? I forget if that was one of the things that
no,
they.
they can. They
I
can.
don't think they
I thought
can.
they could register to vote
I don't
once
think they
they're in
can
this.
when they live. Yeah, when they live in
Oh,
Puerto
in this.
Rico, they can't. But when they
Right,
get here, they can. Right.
because they have their own votes in Puerto Rico for things. Right.
Yeah. Well.
They
Yeah.
have their
Yeah.
own governmental system to a certain extent. Like they just recently, I want to say it was how many years ago? Not
A couple of years ago,
2016. Was it 2012? I want to say it was like
they voted
2012.
to become a state
Well, they,
recently.
like they legalized marijuana in Puerto
Mm,
Rico. That was one of those things. So they're autonomous from that standpoint, I believe,
right.
making laws and things like that that aren't going to be governed by federal regulation
Yeah.
ultimately. They can't just go into Puerto Rico like they can one of our legal states here and do what they want.
Can they? I don't know. I don't know how that works, actually, to be
Uh,
honest. I don't know how the territory versus state
yeah.
federal regulation thing works.
But you mentioned that. That reminds me. You remember last week I um, took an Uber ride, and I told you about this. My driver was Puerto Rican, and
Mm,
he, surprisingly enough, he came across as pro-Trump because he is for stronger immigration policy. Even with Puerto Ricans, and that was what it was interesting. Was he was saying, he says, I don't like a lot of Puerto Ricans that come over here because they're coming over here to deal drugs. They're coming over here
hmm.
to do illicit things that they can get away with. I guess because maybe the access and is harder to do in Puerto Rico, but he's like, it needs to be stronger, even though he's a citizen, right? Even though Puerto
Hmm.
Ricans are citizens, he feels that, we need to be a little more cautious about just letting every Puerto Rican come over here. And this is coming
Interesting.
from a Puerto Rican, right?
Yeah.
And we had gotten on the conversation because he talked about a couple that got in his car and how, he was talking about, judgmental people. He's been here for a year and he speaks relatively good English. Like he's like, I've been focusing this, on learning English. If you go to a country, you
Hmm.
should learn the language. That's his
Yeah.
mindset, right? That's what
I
he
agree
told
with
me.
that. I
And I'm
mean,
like, bravo, more power to you. But
yeah.
because of his accent and because of his, some of the broken or challenges that he maybe still
Sure.
face with English,
Yeah,
this white couple
absolutely.
in the back, he heard the wife telling the husband, well, I don't understand why they hire these non-English speaking drivers.
Wow.
It's like,
What a cunt.
right? I was saying, well, cunt, did you
Yeah.
ask me if I speak English? I heard that.
Right.
I understood that, you bitch.
Right.
you know,
What the fuck?
um,
Yeah.
which and that's the part that pisses me off. It's like, okay, did you stop to ask where he's from and realize that he's an American citizen for all intents and purposes? I mean,
Right.
hey, fuck you. You know, I mean, it is what it is. He's trying. It's not like he's coming over here like some people I've seen that just they disavow speaking English. They just won't. They don't need to bother. Fuck that. They'll
Yeah.
stay in their community. They'll only deal with Hispanic speaking people, and they'll be fine. Well, fuck you. We
Yeah.
speak English here, or we speak American.
Yeah, we do. We speak American. Just American, not
But
American.
they won't designate.
American.
That's what kills me is we're what going on 300 years old as a country. I mean
Yeah.
250, whatever. We still haven't declared a national language.
Yeah. I mean, it has to do with, how we started off as a country. There were a lot of English people, yeah, but there were also a lot of Dutch and German, French, Russian. There were tons of different kinds of people who spoke their own languages.
Yeah, but
So it kind of started that way, and they would, so we do have a common language in that most people here speak English,
right, but our
but
government doesn't designate a national language for the country.
right, I wouldn't be against them doing that,
Well, I
but
think it's
I can see why they
necessary.
haven't.
I wouldn't be bothered by setting a standard of what the universal language for this country should be.
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it is. You already know I have problems with people who don't feel the need
well,
to
I mean,
learn to speak the language. They learn
right,
enough
but
to get citizenship, but
what would be designating, like, what would it do to designate English as the official language?
well, look, to be honest with you, I think that way you don't you. One thing it would do would stop you from having to run into issues. For instance, I've worked, I've got a history in restaurants. Now, when
Hmm.
you're dealing with front-facing employees, like I worked in one, it was a sandwich shop, right? And we're all there on the line with a line of customers right on the other side of the counter from us. Swahili, nice, Tinchi. Um, if two employees are there who should be interacting with customers, but they stop speaking English, like they're using English to communicate for the food process, but they
Hmm.
stop doing that and then they start speaking to each other in Spanish or Portuguese or
Okay.
Chinese. That can easily give a customer the feeling that they're being talked about, especially if they had just interacted with a customer and then the next thing they do is go into a different
Okay,
dialect, right?
but
But you can't enforce
so
that as an employer and say you must speak English
you
while
couldn't
you're
do that
working.
even if you couldn't even do that if the official language
Sure,
was English. I
sure.
mean, because all that really does is just say, "Hey, we speak English here." There's no unless you pass regulation, but I'm not sure
It's not. It's
that
not.
would
Well,
affect the First Amendment, right? Because I mean, you have freedom of speech. I imagine that would extend to the freedom of language as well.
but what it would allow if we said English is considered the national language for America. If the federal government stated that this is what
Hmm.
we deem our language for this country, then I, as an employer, can set an expectation that English is spoken. If you can
Well, you
speak
can do that
English,
now.
no, you cannot. It becomes a
Yeah, you
human
can.
resources issue. I got called out for that, for expecting employees to speak English on the line. I was told I
I have
can't
become
enforce
skeptical.
that, and because companies don't want the liability of racism. They that
Well, yes, that's a
they
different issue
Human
than
resources qualify that as racism if you tell employees that they have to speak English while they're working, especially even if they're customer facing. Now, I understand if you have a customer that speaks a different language to communicate with them if they don't speak English. I get that. But to employees, I have a problem with that because it gives a bad impression to customers. It really does. But you can't enforce it because, again, it becomes a human resource, especially
Mhm.
even more so in this day and age. Because you're a racist if you say I can't, talk to somebody in my own language.
Right. So, if using that logic, though, then we're never going to state English as our national language because that would be racist. So, it's just not going to happen
Is that
in
so
that
wrong?
case.
Don't, but other countries
Yeah, they're allowed
have
to.
designated. You're right, but we're not, right? All right.
Right.
Speaking of other countries, John, let's.
Ah, good transition.
Why do you have to point out when it's a good transition? Why can't you just let it be a
You know what?
transition,
Why
a
can't you just
segue?
accept a compliment? Why can't
Thanks.
you just accept a compliment?
Tell me off mic after the show
Be
when you're giving me
like, oh,
my
remember that one
when you're
that
giving me
one
my
transition.
handy, okay?
All right, I'll
All right.
let you know then.
So anyway, the European Commission, which basically is sets the standards and protocols for the European Union, has determined that now Americans, starting in 2021, must have a visa to visit 22 different countries in Europe. If you want to go to any of these 22 countries, and I haven't seen the full list yet, but basically 22 countries pretty much covers a lot of Europe, like most of the EU, basically, if not more. But you
Yeah,
have to get a visa now. If you do not have the visa, once this goes into place January 1st, 2021, you cannot board any form of transportation that goes into those countries without the visa.
including France, Germany, and Italy.
Well, of
Uh,
course, they're.
I like this. If you're visiting the UK, you will not need to apply for the visa. That's because the UK is not going to be in the EU anymore.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting, right?
Yeah.
So the visa is, they're calling it I guess you would call it ETIAS, the European Travel Information and Authorization System. And basically it's basically a way to enforce stronger immigration policy is ultimately what it
Mm.
comes down to. But are Americans a problem in that regard? I
I
mean,
mean,
why target America?
I've heard really bad stereotypes about American tourists in European countries, but I don't see that as a reason to stop or make it more difficult, I guess, for them to travel there. I think they have much bigger issues with people traveling to Europe than obnoxious American tourists. I mean, come on.
Just it's kind of surprising to me that Americans
I mean,
are.
they'll spend a lot of money in your country. I mean, just saying.
If I'm not mistaken, most of those
Does,
countries hate to fucking see Americans come rolling in anyway, though.
well, yeah, because I mean, they hate what they can't be.
Yeah,
So.
Or it could be that we're rude pieces of shit because we're American.
You ever been to France? They're rude pieces of shit too.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. They're rude when they're here. That doesn't mean they're
They're rude
rude there.
everywhere. No, they're rude everywhere, especially if you're American.
Well, let me ask you this,
They're
John.
not fans.
Well, let me ask you this. If you're going to go to France, how much of the language are you going to learn before you visit?
None of it.
So you're just going to go over pure plain English.
Yep.
And that's typically what I remember growing up. That was typically the complaint. Like that's why, like the French, that rude thing. You would hear talk about it. It's like because Americans come over and they're just rude as fuck. They want everything and they don't bother with trying to learn the language or any of the language to interact.
I mean, I can say a few things in French, like merci, merci beaucoup. Thank you, thanks a lot. It's pretty polite.
I mean, we are kind of America-centric. I mean, there's a lot of Americans that go travel abroad that expect that whatever country they go to, they should just understand English.
Well, most of them do. English and Mandarin Chinese are the two biggest trade languages in the world.
Sure.
Most people do know English. Most countries that don't speak English have English as like a language that you learn in school as you're growing up.
Sure. But
whereas we only have that in high school and no one really cares. You just have to kind of like act like you've learned it a little bit in order to graduate.
But my guess is if you've lived in France all your life and you didn't travel to English-speaking countries, probably aren't going to remember most of it.
Tenchi has a good one too. Omelette du fromage. That's what I'm talking about.
Cheese omelet.
Yeah. Omelet with cheese. Indeed.
I like mine with I don't know how to say. I don't know
meat
how to
lovers
say pork.
Omelet.
I just like ham.
Either.
I like ham in it. Just something about it, or sausage, or bacon.
Just
meat lovers. Throw it all in.
Yeah, meat lovers.
Good call.
Exactly.
Well, it's got to have cheese too. Does cheese?
Well, yeah, of course.
Qualify
okay, when you get a meat lovers pizza, does it not have cheese on it as well? Right.
Okay, an omelet doesn't have to have cheese though for everything.
And tenchi, you know what they call a hamburger with cheese in France? That would be
royale with
a royale
cheese.
With royale du fromage. Not a royale with cheese. That would be English. God.
What?
That's actually a quarter pounder, by the way, Tenchi, what you're referencing.
What is it?
Because they don't have quarter pound. Mm-hmm. They use the metric system because they're a bunch of gays.
Royale with cheese.
Yeah, royale du fromage.
What's your language, John?
No,
so I don't know. I've never.
So what's funny about that is I'm actually planning on going to Europe next year. So I'm glad I'm doing that.
Shut up. Where are you going, John?
Instead of I'm going to Ireland.
The fuck for? You don't get enough beer here?
No, I don't get enough whiskey here.
They sell it.
Yeah, but I want some better whiskey.
I mean, you're literally across the street from a liquor store, John.
Yeah, but there's a number of reasons I want to go. One, I've never been to Europe. I've only been to Canada. And that was just barely. Like, I could still see New York from where I was.
Then you really didn't go to Canada.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It was a tourist area. It was Niagara Falls. I mean, it's touristy as fuck. But, yeah, I've never been to Europe. My family's from Ireland, so I'm going to go over there. Check that out. Some castles I want to visit because I'm a huge, history nerd. And there's tons and tons and tons of castles over there.
Tons of castles?
Yeah, like shitloads.
Isn't one castle like multiple tons already?
Yeah. But there's shitloads of castles over there.
Shitloads?
A ridiculous amount, yeah.
How much do they rent them for?
I don't know. I haven't looked that up. But there's a bunch of like Neolithic ruins, things like that, things that were being built at the same time as the pyramids. So that'll be cool to see. Giant's Causeway would be pretty awesome to see.
So you're just going to get drunk, actually. You're making up a bunch of reasons, but you're really just going to get drunk.
I mean, I could do that here. I don't need to spend a shitload of money to go to a European country to get drunk. I
But
can do that
you're the
anywhere.
but you're the kind of person that would.
I don't think so.
I think you would. Just to say I got drunk in Ireland.
I
For
mean, yeah, I'm not saying I'm not going to do that. I'm not, but I'm not going to spend a shitload of money just to do that.
I spent a week drunk in Ireland and all I got was this fucking t-shirt.
That'd be kind of awesome. I hope they sell that. I'll buy it in the airport for 40, $42 or I don't know, euros, whatever, however many euros that would be.
Do you like your beer warm?
No.
You better enjoy it. You better figure it out. Because if I'm not mistaken, most European countries, Ireland included, their beers, well, beer, they're, what do they call it? What do they, ale?
Beer.
Is it just, do they refer to it as beer? Or is it all ale
It's
over there?
beer. Yeah,
Yeah.
ale is a different way of
Or
making.
stouts or whatever. But I
Yeah, those are all
believe
different kinds of
if
beers.
if I'm not mistaken, unless of course tourism, they typically serve them room temperature.
Maybe.
I mean,
I mean,
it's
it's not something that, I
I
care that much about. And
like
I'll be drinking whiskey mostly anyway. So,
yeah. Guinness. Guinness. I was
yeah, I'm
talking.
not a fan.
I was
Not
talking
a
to
fan.
somebody from Guinness is from where? Scotland or Ireland?
Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah.
Then he was Irish and he was telling me that we fuck Guinness up because
Yeah,
we
it's
put it
not
in
our
the
fault.
fridge. We put it in the fridge.
Yeah. Well, it's also different. From what I've been hearing, it's different when you drink it in Ireland and when you drink it here. Like the Guinness that we get here, due to something I don't have all the specifics, but something about the way that it's like packaged for transport and things like that, it fucks it up on the way over here. And so the Guinness that we get in America is not nearly as good as the Guinness over
Yeah,
there. It's much more fresh. That's where they make it,
yeah. It's not
and
the
it
true
doesn't.
lager that it is there.
It's not a lager.
I
No,
thought it was a stout.
it's a stout. I'm pretty sure it's a
It's
stout.
a stout lager.
No, oh my god,
All right.
is that like a
I need a
clipazine?
fact check then. I need a fact check. I thought Guinness was a lager and it's called a
I
stout.
don't think so. I don't think it's a lager.
Damn it,
It's
John.
too heavy. It's way too heavy.
That's what I've always associated with lagers anyway.
You ever had a Yingling?
Yes.
It's not that heavy.
Is that
It's
considered a
really.
lager?
It is a lager, yeah. At least the original Yingling is. I mean they make other kinds, but
Plus minus
plus minus.
plus. What is
I
he
don't know what
trying
that
to
means.
determine his gender?
Is that like Morse code or what's going on? Not sure.
So Guinness Stout is actually a dark brewed.
Oh yeah, whatever. Blame the dog, Tenchi. That's fine. Just blame the dog.
I thought he was recommending paint. Um,
Oh,
Guinness Stout is actually a dark brewed, light bodied, low alcohol ale.
it's an ale.
It's considered an ale, a stout ale.
Fair enough. Yeah, I probably won't be drinking any Guinness though. Plus, I don't want to be that asshole tourist who's like, "Let me get a Guinness." Like, no, I'm gonna be like, "Let me try a local, some local shit." That's what I want.
Right? It's just like people going to Australia and asking for a Foster's.
For Foster's, yeah.
What,
They're like,
what
"Oh,
the fuck is that?
you like the taste of piss, do you?"
Yeah, you like that? All right, so yeah, get that out of the way before 2021, John, or you're going to need to get yourself a special visa. Although the visa doesn't seem to be very difficult, not real major. Ask for passport information, some security questions, and it's good for 3 years.
Yeah, because their passport's not enough apparently.
No, no, it's not. Well, it's we did some we kind of did that here though. Remember after 9/11, the Patriot Act and all of that, they went through and they demanded that all states verify all citizens that carry driver's license or a state issued ID. You had to go back in
Yeah.
and renew it and bring all your proofs again and re-establish your citizenship with your ID.
See, I didn't have to do that because I was 11 when 9/11 happened.
Well, sure, but you did have to do it when you got your license. Basically, all that information they asked
Mm.
for when you get your license, that's them
Yeah,
verifying your
I
citizenship,
got you.
etc.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they put new platforms into place for that. I remember having that. I was like, "Fuck, I need a license? Why?" It's required of everybody.
Yeah.
But
Fucking Patriot Act.
yeah. So speaking of the Patriot Act and all of the wonderful Big Brother things that it
Oh,
pulled
God.
out of the woodwork.
You're on fire with the transitions tonight.
Thanks.
Just saying.
Um, there is a there's some talk now that some leaked documents have come out and show that the U.S. government is tracking journalists and immigration advocates through a secret database. Now, this is basically in regards. This was the catalyst for this was the caravans coming up. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that, like, from the standpoint of journalists, it was because journalists were going to be going back and forth down, in and out the border, through the border, et cetera, et cetera. But tracking journalists, immigration advocates, and also, though you don't like being called this, social media influencers, or as we like to call ourselves, new media. Now
New
that's the
media or content creator is what I'll go with. Fuck social media influencer. What the fuck? Like, I'm not trying to influence you. You all right over there? Got bugs all over you?
no. I think I had a my skin is suddenly starting to peel from sunburn.
Oh shit.
Yeah. But anyway, so now that one, that's the one. So, why would, in regards to the caravan, like I get journalists to a certain extent, I understand activists.
Oh shit, Midget B in the chat.
What up, you?
Dude, we missed
What
you.
up, you
We missed you on Monday.
queens? We're queens now,
Butthole.
John. I'm finally gonna get my crown.
Aw.
I'm gonna have my
Hey.
crown, John.
It's better than being a peasant. I
Right,
mean, just saying.
right. The best a peasant can get is a wrench. Um,
Get him.
so why social media influencers? Why new media? Was that? Do you think that that was just an addition to this to give them a reason to watch what's going on in new media because it's becoming very influential in this country?
Yeah, I don't like the idea of them keeping tabs on people. That just screams of like Big Brother and thought policing and if you're against the administration or whatever, here we're gonna do something or at least keep tabs on you.
Well,
I
I
don't
know
like
you
the
don't
idea.
like it, but it feeds into my theory that if Trump had his druthers, he would control the media. I honestly believe that if he could control what journalists were putting out, he would, much like any other dictator in the world. Not that he is a dictator, but
Right, but he
but
wants to
many
be.
people will agree that he has the mindset of a dictator, and he's even like given reason to believe that, right? With China's,
Well, so he says things like that, largely because he has been a dictator
mm-hmm.
in, his businesses. So, I mean, I can see that mentality, but I mean, that's why we have our checks and balances. That's why we have a governmental
Sure.
system that won't allow for that, which is really good. Obviously, we shouldn't have something like that happen.
So the question becomes, now that they have it going on, do they stop it, or does the exposition of the documents stop it, or do they just not give a shit and keep doing it?
They probably don't give a shit and just keep doing it, like they did with the whole like spying program. The NSA keeping tabs on your emails and all that kind of nonsense, phone calls and text messages, all that. They don't give a shit. They'll be
Now,
fine.
there were journalists, as this says, in the months that followed, Journalists who covered the caravan, as well as those who offered assistance to caravan members, said they felt they had become targets of intense inspections and scrutiny by border officials. One photojournalist said she was pulled into secondary inspections three
Mm,
times and asked questions
makes
about
sense.
who she saw and photographed in Tijuana shelters.
Oh,
Another photojournalist says she spent
hmm.
13 hours detained by Mexican authorities when she tried to cross the border into Mexico City. Eventually, she was denied entry into Mexico and sent back to the U.S.
Hmm.
These American photojournalists and attorneys said they suspected the U.S. government was monitoring them closely, but until now, they couldn't prove it. The document showed that their own government had listed their names in a secret database of targets where agents collected information on them. Some had alerts placed on their passports, keeping at least two photojournalists and an attorney from entering Mexico to work. The documents were provided by a Homeland Security source on the condition of anonymity, given the sensitive nature of what they were divulging. Uh, Now, is that justified? Is any of this justified when we're talking about the caravans and the border security, working with Mexico to, I don't know. I'm not going to harshly use the word harass, but
Hmm.
should we be placing that much scrutiny on them, or should our government, I should say?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I can understand why, someone like that would be stopped and or pushed into what is it, secondary inspection, to make sure that they're not smuggling someone in. But other than that, no, I don't think they should be keeping tabs on them and asking them what they're doing. And I mean, on the Mexican side, they have different laws than we do. They have different rights than we do. But on this side, on the American side, I don't think that they should be doing that. No.
Well, they did it under the umbrella of the caravan. So,
Yeah, it's still irrelevant as long as they're not smuggling someone in. It's irrelevant what they did somewhere else.
right. And so if they're continuing to track them, and, it's kind of obvious that not as much journalism is going on about the caravans as was happening before the midterms. Because, as we've talked about off mic and on camera, every bit of talk about the caravans kind of dried up as soon as the election was over.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where it's like, okay, they're saying that a third caravan is on its way, and yet our president, who strongly supports border security and keeping
Hmm.
Americans safe, is not still harping about these caravans coming. He's not warning us. He's not keeping us up to date.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how important is, it goes back to that question. How important is your border security if the things that you deem so urgent just a scant few months ago are no longer urgent?
Well, that's the big thing about his, about his policies. His biggest campaign promise was the wall, right? So he has to get that at least started if he thinks he's going to get reelected again. I've said this before. But when it comes to like the caravan, it's not in the news, right? It's not in the media cycle.
Well,
And
that
so talking about it though, I don't think would do him any favors. Whereas like he's fighting on other fronts at the moment. He's doing other things. He's trying to get, these different
but
the media cycles in other places at the moment, and so he needs to be talking about what the media is talking about
well, but
as opposed to what's, I guess, really going on.
but that says he's
Like
being driven
recently,
by the media versus the media being driven by him.
well, it's kind of a back and forth, really. I mean, when he wants the media to talk about something, he will discuss it. But then when he doesn't, he'll just talk about what they're talking about.
Because it would make sense
And
to
so
me.
right now, recently it was the Vietnam, North Korea Vietnam,
Mhm.
summit. That was the most recent thing that he's been dealing with. So why is he talking about a caravan? Why would he talk about a caravan when that's his big thing right now. This is what he's concentrating on, was the North Korea summit.
Because if he had continued to talk about the caravan or caravans,
Hmm.
continuing that discussion, going into a potential government shutdown over border wall funding, keeping that topic in the media eye, even
I
if
see what you're
only
saying.
half of the media eye is focused on it, that would have been gotten more strong public opinion that would have influenced decisions
Yeah.
on that border funding.
Yeah,
And
so
I
I
don't
think with
understand
that,
why he didn't play that quote
I
unquote
think,
trump card.
well, I think he didn't do that because he was trying to get as many Democrats as he could on his side to pass this spending bill on getting the wall done. So he's like, all right, I won't, because that's a real sensitive issue for them. And so he'll say, all right, well, I'm not going to talk about it, but let's get this done. Whether or not it worked out, obviously it didn't. It didn't work out in his favor for that, but that was probably part of his strategy.
Well, I guess it's this idea that the smart thing to do is sway public opinion as much as you can, because that way your representatives are more likely to go based to cast their vote based off their constituents' public opinion. That's the
Mm.
thing. I mean, getting the people of America on board with this by keeping us scared of the caravans and all this mass of people that are coming up,
Yeah,
that is
but
going to get constituents asking their senators,
yeah,
asking their
but the thing is,
representatives.
fear mongering isn't as effective as it was. What is it, like 20? Not even 20 years ago, 15 years ago or so. Fear mongering doesn't work as much. People see through it a lot more than they used to.
It almost
So
worked.
I'm not sure that's a good move.
The caravan fear mongering almost worked
No, it
in
was
the
really
in the
good. It was,
midterms.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
and that's why I say, I mean, it almost worked there, but
Hmm.
it would have been. I think it would have worked even better when it comes to getting funding for the wall. That's
Well, I
different
think
yet
that's
to
what he tried
me.
to do. What he
Yeah,
tried to do was he was talking about the wall more than ever.
the wall, yes, but not the
That's when he
caravans.
really. But no, he was talking about the caravan a little bit, but he was especially talking about the wall. Especially like during the midterms, he was like, "Look,
Right, right.
caravan
Well, and that's
wall,
my point. But
caravan
but after
wall."
but
Right?
after the midterm elections, 99% of his talk about the caravan dried up, and he
Yeah,
continued
well,
to
because
talk about the wall.
the Democrats won the House, right?
Sure,
Yeah,
but
so he
constituents are
has to get them on.
constituents.
Yeah, but he has to get them on his side, and
Right. And use their
he's not going
constituents
to do
against
that.
them. If you use their constituents against them, that's,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying? I mean,
How many
they may
people do you think actually write letters to their,
more than you
representatives?
think, John. More than you
Not
think.
enough, I don't think.
There are still plenty of old school people in this country that write their congressmen, that write their representatives, that
Yeah.
understand that that actually makes a difference. When their email fills up with 1,000, 2,000 people in their representative area, they start to pay attention. I mean, this is something that still goes on. Especially now, you can just do it by email. You don't have to
Well,
write a letter to your
especially
congressman
when they
anymore.
don't read their own emails, depending on
Well, sure.
how long they've been a representative or how long they've
Well,
been in Congress or Senate, whatever. I mean,
but they have people on their staff to gather this information and to
yeah.
tell them what are our constituents talking about? Where do we stand?
Mm,
It has to be there because they're supposed to be representing those people, so they need to be listening to the will of the people. How much they do, I don't know. But I do know
yeah.
that there's still a lot of people out there that know how to communicate with their representatives and understand that that is a viable option for getting some opinion and swaying votes. I just think the fear mongering about the caravan, if it had gone on, if he had kept on with it, especially as a second and now a third, I think he would have got his
Hmm.
border wall funding much quicker than
I don't know.
he
Maybe.
currently is, because
I mean, maybe.
now for the border wall funding, He's had to call the national emergency, right? And they're fighting that. They may shut it down and be able to shut it down. It's a back and forth. But the Pentagon has stepped up to help him out. And according to the numbers, basically, Trump's numbers have talked that he wants to pull $3.6 billion towards the wall. Now, that money is going to be the bulk of that money is going to come from the housing funds for the military. So basically the funds that the military uses to maintain housing on base and military hospitals. So $3.6 billion coming from that. Well, now the Pentagon has stepped up and said, we can get you another billion. And the way we can get you this billion is this. We have lower recruitment right now. Okay, so the Army is reporting that just this past year, 6,500 soldiers below their forecast, what they were hoping to get for recruitment. That being said, they have a pool of money that they can dole out in bonuses, sign-on bonuses, this, that, and the other thing, whatever, right, for new recruits. Well, if we have lower recruitment, then we still have that pool of money there. So they're going to pull money from there. Also, there's a pension fund. Now, the way the pension fund is set up is they have a program for early retirement, right? So you can opt to take early retirement from the military, and if you do, they have money apportioned for that. Well, fewer military people are opting for that, so there's a surplus of funds there. So the Pentagon has said, we can get you $1 billion from these two sources. And it goes back to what you were saying. Trump needs to. Yeah. Now this is I pivotal to his reelection. Like internally for him, he has to get something built on the wall before 2020, before that election happens, right?
He has to at least have something in motion. Right. He has to say, "Look, we're building the wall. Here it comes."
Right. He's got to at least get building started. He's got to have a section of wall done, and that's what this article is kind of talking about. He's got to do something just to at least get a piece of the new wall done. I mean, he's actively down there. He's got people actively down there revamping the wall, doing replacements and upgrades and everything to existing wall. He cannot do anything else right now. So now the Pentagon is going to give him $1 billion. Now, interestingly enough, this is not part of the budget program, right? The budget that was put forward where he asked for the $3.6 billion. So this might specifically be that money he needs to get the wall started. This could be the $1 billion that saves his ass. Yeah. Or saves face for him. In getting some of the wall started. But it sounds like if he can build it for $3.6 billion, this is going to get about a quarter of the wall done for $1 billion.
It'll be enough to get him reelected, and he can deal with that next year with the budget and have the same kind of fight over again and get another $3.6 billion or, maybe even more, however much, that can happen. But real quick, though, I got to pee really bad.
Nobody cares.
So I'm gonna go do that real quick. Well, I'm gonna go do that real quick. So I think you should care. So make sure you rant a little bit about how Orange Man bad.
Well, I'm gonna talk some more about this. So just hurry up. Hurry up.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Hurry up, John. Hurry up. John, hurry up. John, hurry. Like Duke Nukem says, your face or your ass. What's the difference? Now, see, I agree with that, Midget. There's not much difference between the two, especially in my case. So. One of the things that about this is that the Senator Durbin who put this forward, was talking about this, and he's for it. He's a Republican. He says, imagine Democrats making the proposal that for whatever our project is, we're going to cut military pay and pensions. And I thought it was interesting because this article, of course, is a little bit slanted. It says we know exactly how Democrats would be painted as opponents of military's families. But when it's all said and done, I think that could go either way. Republicans do this, and Republicans are typically or historically military friendly. There's justification for where the funds are coming from, etc. But my problem is the $3.6 billion that he's asked for initially to come from the military housing fund, and only from the standpoint that this is money that's supposed to keep up military base housing and is supposed to fund hospitals. I would rather he take it from surplus funds. If he can get more than $1 billion, so be it. But I don't agree with him taking money from housing. I think that's kind of a shitty thing, especially, I mean, now there are reports now, again, article can be slanted somewhat. We don't have any media now, I believe, if I remember correctly, that's honest and true anymore. It's all fake news. But they state that military families are routinely fight mold, rat infestations, and water contaminations in the military housing areas or on bases. I believe he did increase military spending, and there's the beauty of it. If he did increase military spending, it's quite possible that he self-created, he manipulated surpluses. Maybe he...
I mean, if you want to make the 4D chess argument, then yeah.
Well, it's not like he doesn't have people sitting around advising him on this. And to say, okay, so if we can put this much into the military, we're not actually going to fucking need it because not as many people are signing up, not as many people leaving the military. So a lot of this is going to go to surplus funds, but we can justify it because it's going to the military. And now he's got, is it possible he pre-set up this?
I mean, like I said, if you want to make the 4D chess argument, then yeah, you could say that. But the thing is, we really don't know.
No, we don't.
We don't know what he, what his intentions were.
And like and I was just saying, I'm okay with the $1 billion coming from where they're showing it coming from. The 3.6 he's asking for, I've told you off mic, I have more issue with that.
With the housing?
Yeah, don't take money from housing and hospitals for our military. Fuck you. Those things are important. I mean, I want a strong and healthy, happy military. I want people,
a happy military, especially. Yeah.
Yes, and what you have at home, what's going on at home when your wife and children are at home and they're dealing with bullshit issues that there's not enough money to fix or take care of, kind of tend to have a problem. Now, if you want to try and tell me that there's so much surplus in the housing funds that you can take $3.6 billion from it, so be it. But my guess is you wouldn't have reports, issues with military housing if there is a surplus because everything would be getting taken care of, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know that much about it. I've never lived in military housing.
It really depends on the base, to be honest with you.
I imagine it would, yeah.
But no, it can get pretty crappy. I mean, I've been on military bases and seen both ends of the spectrum, where there's. I mean, you've got to think about in a reasonable sense that there are a lot of people living in military housing that don't work. They don't do anything, right? They don't have to pay rent. They don't, so they can kind of let that shit go.
They don't have to care about the property.
Right. There's no ownership in it, right? So, don't take $3.6 billion from that because people are fucking stupid. They'll fuck your shit up. You need to fix that stuff. Need our military happy. We need nice homes for them to live in if they're going to live on base. Or livable homes. It doesn't have to be nice, but it's got to be livable, right? Mold, water contamination, shit like that, shouldn't fly.
It's got to be livable, yeah.
Yeah. And hospitals, that's the one. I mean, if I were going to talk about health care in this country, I think the people that should receive the best health care in this country are military people at military hospitals. I don't give a shit what anybody else says. I want my military in top fighting shape. They should have the best doctors at those hospitals taking care of them. Just like field medics need to be number one crazy ass healing motherfuckers, right? That's your goal when you train a medic.
You got to make sure their cooldown is lower, right? So they can keep healing throughout the raid.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
pump them up with a few mana potions and.
Right.
But
Exactly.
so I don't love the way he's doing it, and it's very surprising in the sense that Republicans typically pro-military,
Yeah.
you know, but they're
Well, so that's the thing is they're not pro-military; they're pro-war.
well, right, but
And
you need a
there's a
military for
distinct
that,
difference. Well, yeah, but there's a distinction.
don't you? Are they mutually exclusive? Don't you need to
I
be
don't. No, they're not.
military friendly?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. But they're not necessarily mutually inclusive. So, like, you can say, oh well, we'll give people incentives to join up, and we'll just send people over there. Give them whatever training we need to give them and send them over there. But we don't care what happens to them once they come back, because the point is the war needs to keep going on, and that's what's been happening with Afghanistan and Iraq.
Vietnam.
Is that well, yeah, Vietnam too.
It goes as far back as Vietnam. That kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying recently though. I was just giving you a recent.
No, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Vietnam is a great example of that. Doesn't we just need to be at war, and that's what the military industrial complex does. It's an economy based on like military contractors, defense contractors, or weapons contractors, or whatever. We need to be in a constant state of war to keep those industries going, which then helps our economy out.
Okay, so I guess to better phrase that, they're not military friendly. They're military size queens.
Yeah,
It's about the size of the military, not the quality.
right.
Right.
Right, exactly. It's not about quality; it's about quantity.
Yeah, it's and that's
And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of quality people out there, a lot of quality, troops out there. But for the most part, it's just about having boots on the ground,
well,
as many boots as you can get.
I think one thing that we may have learned from Vietnam is you can't just put a gun in somebody's hand and ship them over to another country and expect to be successful.
Right.
Even with the minimal amount of training that they were giving people. I want to say that what was it? What was the life expectancy of a lieutenant colonel stepping off of a fucking?
Wait, a lieutenant colonel?
Was it a lieutenant colonel or a
Oh,
lieutenant?
I think you're thinking. I think you're thinking a second lieutenant
Maybe a
because they were
second
killed
lieutenant.
very
Yeah,
often.
yeah. It's like
The
12
second
seconds.
lieutenants, second lieutenants, they had the nickname Butter Bars because they had the gold bar, one single gold bar on their helmet, which is the insignia of a second lieutenant. But the thing is, it was very shiny, and it would, what's it called? Like reflect light
They make them a
quite a
target.
bit. Right, and so they'd be a target for enemy snipers. So they got dropped all the time.
Well, I think their
And
life.
it was actually after that that they started using the black bars instead of gold.
Well, I think their life expectancy was like, whenever you're doing a hot drop, 12 seconds.
Yeah, it wasn't long because of that, exactly because of that insignia was the main reason why. You could pick out an officer, especially a second lieutenant, quicker than anyone else because of that insignia. So that was a huge, huge reason.
Yeah, but see, that's at least I think the difference is that with Vietnam, between Vietnam and the current Middle Eastern conflicts that we have, I don't see us just throwing guns in the hands of boys and sending them over there. These are actually people in the military, signed up in the military, going through boot camp, going through job training. They do the process, right? It's not like the meat grinder that Vietnam was, really.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially, because there were some crazy motherfuckers that they were sending over there. There was all sorts of fucked up shit going on in Vietnam. So,
Yeah.
So you can't just put a gun in the hands of anybody. And speaking of guns in the hands of just anybody,
Yeah.
so there's been some gun regulation back and forth over the last couple of weeks, and I know that this is a fun topic for you, John, because you love to talk about guns.
Yeah.
But the House has voted to require universal background checks on gun sales. Now, basically, what this is saying is that all gun sales would require a background check, even amongst private sellers. So,
Right.
and an example that they give in this article is if two guys, you and I, meet each other at a gun convention, a gun show,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a private seller, I'm a private buyer, we can't just go and make a transaction anymore. If this law goes into effect, you would have to turn your gun over to one of the vendors there at the gun show and have them run the
Yeah.
background check.
Right.
Now, if you're my brother, doesn't fucking matter. I can sell you a gun all day long.
Mm-hmm.
No background check required. Or if you need to go and if you're in a situation to protect yourself, I can hand you a gun and you can use it. Or if you want to go hunting, I can loan you a gun to do that. Right?
Yeah.
But from the standpoint of sales, now, not only that, but there was also legislation to attempt to fix a loophole in gun law with the 3-day background check. And the thought was to extend it from a 3-day background check to a 10-day background check. And not to make it harder to get the guns.
Mm-hmm.
It was about letting the FBI have time to do their job. Because according to data released by the FBI, this is data that comes from the FBI, last year they failed to complete 276,000 gun background checks within the 3-day time period out of 8.2 million background checks that were submitted last year. Now, 276,000 of those checks didn't get done in the 3 days. Now, the thing about that is if a background check is not completed within 3 days, federal laws allow a gun dealer to make the sale anyway,
Mm-hmm.
even though many dealers, and including large retailers, choose not to.
Don't do that, right?
So, ultimately, there were 276 potential guns, right, last year that could have gotten into hands of people who did not pass background checks because they didn't get done in time. Now, that's not to say that they did. I'm just saying that that's the potential there because all the laws say
Sure.
that those 276,000 guns could have been sold anyway without since they didn't get completed.
Right.
So, John,
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about, okay, do you have a problem with them enforcing universal background checks across all gun sales, except those exceptions that I mentioned among family, etc.?
I mean, yeah. I mean, again, it's the principle, of stopping someone from being able to buy a gun. Right? I mean, yeah. So obviously you can with the universal background check, but
Well,
I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. It comes down.
let me ask you this: do you agree
Okay.
that certain felons should not
Mhm.
have guns? If some guy committed
I'm not.
armed
I'm not
robbery and
against.
got
Yeah.
out of jail,
So yeah. So I'm not against that.
okay,
On the fact that once you've violated someone else's rights, you forfeit your own.
right, okay,
So, like, if you break into someone's house, you forfeit your right to live. As soon as you break into someone's house, you
that's a
forfeit
little
your
harsh.
right.
Oh,
No,
yes, right. By that, by the homeowner, right? You forfeit your
right.
life if that homeowner wants to shoot you,
That's
or
it.
stab
Yeah.
you in the face.
Whatever they want to
More,
do. Yeah.
right, stand your ground.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there,
that's castle doctrine, but yeah.
right. So there are people that shouldn't get access to guns, right? Okay,
Yeah.
you've agreed
I mean,
with that.
I'm not
Certain
against
felons,
things. Right. I'm not even against, people with domestic violence records not having guns.
well, and
Right.
that's the
Because
thing.
you
There's
violated
only
someone else's rights.
it's a very short
Right.
list of felons that can't have guns.
Right.
There's only 10 crimes.
But even like misdemeanor domestic violence,
Right. Now, that doesn't qualify.
that doesn't qualify?
No, there's
Sure.
10 felonies that qualify for felonies that prevent you from
Maybe
owning a gun in this country.
maybe
Surprising.
federally, but not I'm sure state by state they have extra. Yeah, state by
maybe.
state they have extra laws. I'm
But
sure.
we're talking federal right now because we're talking about the federal government enacting
Right, but I mean
regulation.
that's important
We're
to acknowledge
it's
that each
important in
state
those
has their own
states.
laws
It's
as
important
well.
in those states. It's not important in the country.
Okay.
When we're talking about governmental regulation, federal government regulation, because what the states do or what the state's going to do. But yeah, there's the federal government has 10 classifications of felony that prevent you. And surprisingly enough, get this, forgery is one of those. It's not even a there's not even a gun involved in forgery, yet it qualifies as a crime where you cannot own a firearm.
Well, it probably has to do with giving false information. Like they can't trust you not to give false information to do the background checks.
Okay,
is what I'm guessing. I don't know exactly why.
If I remember correctly, I don't think embezzlement was on the list.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of them on the list that could be considered arbitrary, but when it's all said and done, it's not a long list. But still, so we've established the fact that you agree that there are certain people that shouldn't have guns, which means that there must be a system in place to prevent those people from getting guns. Thus, we have the background check. That's what makes the background check necessary. It's not to impede you. It's to make
I've never been
you
against
safer.
the background check. I've never been against the background check. It's against further regulation. Further regulation in general. And it's because it's already like guns are not as easy to get a hold of as people think they are. You know, it's been said things like who was it? I think it was Emma Gonzalez during the March for Our Lives thing, where she's like, "It shouldn't be easier to get a gun than it is to make plans with friends on the weekend." And it's like, that's ridiculous. I mean, you have the 3-day background check. There's your weekend right there, for one. You know, and secondly, are your friends that shitty that you can't make plans that easily within 3 days? I mean, just to put that one point,
and I understand
in there.
I understand.
You know, I mean,
I understand the thought that maybe it's a little challenging to get a gun the legal route. But I don't know that it's as difficult to get a hold of a gun the illegal route.
No, it'd be a lot easier as long as you know somebody who will, commit a crime,
or you give somebody enough money. Right?
I mean, sure,
if you go into a
you
gun
could probably
show,
corrupt someone, yeah.
If you go into a gun show with enough money, I mean, this is long
no.
been
If someone
consideration. There are people at
at
gun shows that are less than scrupulous and will sell guns behind the counter.
If someone has an FFL, they are not going to risk that license to take a couple hundred or a couple even $1,000 to risk their entire business over that.
That's like that's like saying someone who passed the bar and as a lawyer isn't going to lie to fucking Congress.
Okay, yeah. I mean they should. But how many
corruption exists, whether people have a license to do the legal shit or not.
You have one example in recent memory, at least. I'm sure there are other examples, but there's one example in recent memory of a lawyer doing.
But that's what I'm saying. It's just it's this mindset that just because someone.
Out of how many lawyers are in this country?
Okay, so that proves my point that there are going to be unscrupulous people that even if they have an FFL,
there's nothing you can do about that.
They will sell FFL,
Federal Firearms License.
Okay, so there are people with FFLs that will ignore the law and will put it at risk because they think they can get away with it. People will do lots of things for money.
Okay,
right?
So yeah, you can't enforce these laws. Then is what you're saying.
Right.
You can't.
Well, I mean, there's some difficulties in enforcing laws. I'm not saying it's happening rampant. I'm just saying that it's long been an understanding of mine that if you went to a gun show, and this is from being much younger, if you go to a gun show, you can get your hands on a gun, whether you have a background check or it's legal or not.
Yeah, that's before then. Before those things were.
Background checks have been around in my life for a lot longer than you think. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not.
they have, but that might have been
I'm
around
50 years old,
before
John.
they were
Younger
heavily.
means 30. I mean,
But no, what I'm saying is that they might have been around. Those laws might have been. They weren't as heavily enforced. They weren't as heavily scrutinized as they are now.
so is that a problem? That the
Um,
laws that are in place are being more scrutinized?
I mean, I think that the laws that are in place should be followed,
Right.
and if you don't like it, you should work to change it. Those laws,
Hmm.
but my, I don't think we need to add more laws on because in the past they weren't as enforced as they are now. I think I'd rather enforce the current laws than keep creating new ones that create more inefficient bureaucracy.
So you think a 10-day waiting period would be excessive on a background check to give the FBI more time?
Yeah,
What
I
about
mean, I'm
five
sorry,
days?
your inefficiency is not my problem.
Well, I mean, so we need to spend more money on
Right? No, we
hiring
need to
more
spend more
FBI
money.
to do the
No,
checks?
that's the point. That's why I'm against it. It's because it creates more government overreach. It creates more government bloat.
Well, okay, but with the current standards in place, we need some way to pick up that slack, that 3.35% that's falling under the table, that's not being done. 276,000 background checks that didn't get done.
Hmm.
You know, we need to increase spending in the FBI to get more people on task getting these done.
No, they need to be either more efficient or stop doing it.
Well, you
Maybe we
can't
need to do
stop
state
doing it.
background checks. Why can't the state do the background check? Just send the thing off. Hey, does this person ping in your database? No? Okay. We'll sell it to them.
So you think that you're of the belief that the federal government should not regulate firearms at all, and it should all fall to the states?
I wouldn't say at all. Um, so I'm not like a Second Amendment purist where I'm going to say everyone needs to have their McNuke. Everyone needs to have their, full on. I guess no one needs to have a javelin missile. So I mean, I'll compromise on those. But when it comes to other things, yeah, I think it should be left up to the states.
Yeah, I don't know. And that repeal the NFA. What's the
Yeah,
NFA?
National Firearms Act.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that I love the idea of gun regulation falling on individual states, because then you get into the muddy waters of what I can do in this state and travel to another state.
Well,
Like,
see, that's the thing that is part of the federal government's what they're allowed to do. They're allowed to regulate interstate commerce. What they're not allowed to do is regulate intrastate commerce.
right. I'm not, but not just commerce. I'm talking about, if we're
But
looking
that has
at.
to, but that's to do with like if I want to bring a gun from one state to another, I have to then adhere to the state that I'm arriving in. I have to adhere to their laws,
Sure. So
as
now,
opposed
as a gun seller, every state you travel to do a gun show, you have to know the regulations for that state.
right.
Okay, so now if I'm a gun owner in this state with certain regulations, see, that's one of those things where states' laws tend to get muddy for me, because again, you create the situation where doing interstate travel
Hmm.
is challenging, right? Like, I can't
Well, I
just
mean,
drive
so
across the border to another
you
state with my
can
gun on my
you
hip if
can a
the
lot of the
laws are going to
time.
change.
Well, you can a lot of the time. A lot of the states will recognize other states' concealed carry permits.
Will they?
So, like, yeah. So if you get one in one state, if other states will say if you have a concealed carry in this state, we will recognize that. So you absolutely can. You just have to make sure you know the law where you're going, which makes sense. I mean,
All right. So, in that sense, how do you feel about the ban on assault rifles
ban on assault rifles. So you're talking
that
about
we have in
the
this country? That the federal ban on assault rifles, automatic weapons.
automatic weapons. Yeah. So yeah, So just to give the definition, an assault rifle is something that has the ability to change from a single fire to fully automatic. And there's some that do single fire to 3 round burst to fully automatic, but an assault rifle is one that switches. Has a select fire. That's what I was looking for. Select
Right.
fire. Um, again, in principle, I want to have people have the point of the Second Amendment really was to allow the citizens to have the same capabilities as the military. Now, obviously, there are weapons that I don't think that anyone should own, but governments do, such as the nuclear weapons,
Sure.
things like that. So this is where I kind of veer from libertarian, like true, full-on
I
libertarianism,
mean, are you okay with
where
putting
I don't.
grenade launchers in citizens' hands?
Yeah, see, not really. Not without it being a purpose. If you're making educational, like there's YouTube videos of people who have grenade launchers and things like that, but they have to go through all these, jump through all these hoops in order to get the licenses and then pay an exorbitant amount
Sure.
of money in order to get them. So it's largely prohibitive, but you can get them.
Sure.
And so
S-
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that being the case on these, very destructive weapons. But the buck stops at stopping semi-automatic weapons for me.
well, have they done that?
They're trying to.
Who is?
You have argued yourself about taking away semi-automatic weapons without
No.
knowing it.
No,
Without knowing it, you have.
I've talked about semi-automatic weapons that can be retooled and made automatic.
Any of them can be.
Can they? Can
Yes.
any semi-automatic be turned
And
automatic?
you're talking about like bump stocks and things like that?
Well, no. Well, there's bump stocks. I think bump stocks. That was a good call. Make those illegal, right?
Okay, so I can make the same effect with my belt loop and a
Okay.
piece of string, and you can have the same effect as a bump stock. It really does nothing. Prohibition does not work. People will find a way. Bump stocks also are not that common. They're a novelty item.
Okay.
No self-respecting marksman would ever use a bump stock.
So
It
back to
only
the
ever works in a crowd,
back to the
which is why it
original
worked in
question.
Vegas.
Are you okay with automatic weapons being in the hands of the citizenry? We'll go.
Yeah,
That's the lowest level I can go in being
yeah,
comparable to what the military carries.
right.
Do you
They
want?
do have fully automatic weapons, but I don't know. I guess I'm fine with where it's at now, where it's a little bit more difficult to get. It's cost prohibitive to get a fully automatic weapon,
Can
but it
you
is not
even get them
impossible.
if they're banned?
Yes, yes, you can.
A legal
You have to
sale.
have yes, you have to get a certain kind of like license. I forget
For
what I
like
forget what it's called.
like you were saying about educational purposes.
Yeah, educational purposes or testing purposes. If you're creating them, if like defense
Okay,
contractors have them,
but
obviously.
we're talking about the
Um,
citizen, just the general citizenry.
no, I mean you can get them. It's just very cost prohibitive in order to get them. You'd have to spend. I forget. It's like something like 1,600, 1,200, or more than that, like $2,000 to get the permit,
Because
and then you
it's,
have to spend another probably 16,000 to get the gun itself.
I
Like
guess,
it's very, very expensive to get and
I get,
very easy to lose.
I guess that's what
And collectors, yeah, Mijipi's right. Collectors can get them as well.
I guess that's what I don't understand then is how do we have a federal ban on assault rifles, automatic weapons like that, yet people can
It's a
still
ban
have
with
them?
exceptions.
Well, from a general citizenry standpoint,
Yeah, I
I
mean you'd
don't
have
I
to.
don't think
You'd have
that
to
should be an
have a good reason
exception.
why you have them.
Well, all I have to say is I'm a collector.
No, you have to have a collector's like permit. You'd have to have some kind of thing saying that yes, I am a collector.
Okay. So
And yeah, what Midget B is saying is correct as well. I'm glad he's
uh,
here to help me out with this because I don't know all the minutia that's involved.
he says the pieces you purchase have to be registered and transferred, and the transfer is expensive as shit. So
As fuck.
whatever.
That's what he says.
I said shit. It works the same way.
Sure.
Fucking and shit, and it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, ultimately, what you're telling, it's like you said something that I thought was key. You were like, it has to have a purpose. Certain weapons have to have a purpose for getting.
Well, that's what the law says.
The Second Amendment, in and of itself, is inherently the only purpose you need, because any weapon you get your hand on, you can get your hands on, could be qualified as being trying to be an equivalent to what the military has.
Right. So that was the point of it, yeah.
So you really don't have to have any other purpose besides standing on the Second Amendment. But as you said, there are a lot of fucking weapons our military has that I would not want to see in the hands of citizens at all.
And I agree with that as well.
And but the argument from
but I think the buck stops at semi-automatic weapon.
Well, fine. I don't have a problem.
There's no reason why someone should not be allowed to have a semi-automatic weapon.
No,
but that's that's
if you
that's on a chopping block right now. That's what is on the chopping block at the moment, or semi-automatic.
Certain ones. They're targeting certain guns. They are targeting the AR-15 because it's been used in so many fucking killings.
Yeah, they're targeting those, but the wording is always semi-automatic weapons. That is what the targeting. That's what the words are being used.
But see, if you
they say semi-automatic and they conflate that with AR-15s as if those are that's exclusively.
But John, you're acting
semi-automatic.
Like you're the way you're saying it. It leads me to believe you think that they would actually include semi-automatic handguns in that, which they won't.
But they don't. People who advocate for that don't realize that that's what they're advocating for. But that is what they are advocating for. Yes.
But most of these laws don't go through. There's
no, they're not going to go through all the time. But the point is that if you can sway public opinion enough, it will eventually go through. It'll be brought up in the House several times before it actually passes. But it will pass eventually if people don't realize what the hell they're talking about.
Well, all I know is that for 40 years, out of my 50 years, I can honestly say I've heard the talk of the Second Amendment, people. I've listened, especially growing up in the Midwest. You'll get my gun when you pry it from my cold, dead hands.
Goddamn right.
We've been hearing this I've been hearing it for 4 fucking decades. They're trying to take our guns away. They're trying to take our guns away. Yet still, in this present day, America has more guns per capita than any other fucking country in the world. So this idea, this slippery slope of they're trying to take our guns away is just fucking Chicken Little constantly to me.
So let me ask you this then. What were the gun laws like back 40 years ago?
Well, I don't know. I was 10 years old. Just because I was hearing the talk, what people were saying, I mean, listening to grown-ups and stuff, I wasn't looking into what the gun law said, and I'd have to research where they stood back then. But it's this idea that you're ever going to be able to take guns away from the people. It's not. It won't happen. The only way it will happen is if the Trumpocracy kicks in.
No, when you try to take someone's rights, you don't take them all at once. You don't just say "bam, gone." You do it little by little. You chip away at it generation after generation until it's gone.
And nothing has happened. We have more guns now than we ever have before. That's what amazes me.
They're more difficult to get, and we have less access to guns. You could buy it
in the 20s. If they're more difficult to get, you're getting them.
In the 20s, you could buy a Tommy gun.
And this idea that they're more difficult to get,
without background checks.
3 days to wait to get a gun. Oh my God, that's so difficult.
Okay,
you can get all the guns you want if you wait 3 days.
For now,
you have to wait 3 days to have
a background
check
you can't get all the guns
for a
you
fucking
want.
job.
I want a Tommy gun.
Nobody is up in arms about a background check for a fucking job.
I want a
Nobody.
Tommy gun. I can't get that, can I?
Yes, you can with the right
How?
permits. Be a collector.
Right, spending an
Do the money.
exorbitant amount of money.
You've already established what it
But
takes
by
to get it.
spending an exorbitant amount of money, as if giving Tommy down the street $20 to get my fucking gun.
That's just money. That's up to you. You just got to come up with your own money. That's on you.
I'm saying legally, I can't.
They don't set the pricing.
No, that's not my point.
Right? I mean, yeah, it costs you more money to get certain weapons, but I mean that's inherent.
Yeah, it's more cost prohibitive because there's more regulation on it than there has ever been before. There's more regulation now. Every time we add more regulation,
we still have more guns
more
than
regulation.
ever before.
Yeah, because as soon as a shooting happens, people say, "Oh no, there's going to be more regulation. Let me go ahead and buy a gun now to avoid the future prohibitive costs."
Okay, and so let me get this straight.
How long do you think it'll be
have
until there's a
more
national
guns,
registry?
but it's harder to get them, so that's bad.
We have more guns because we buy more guns before the regulations come up, and then there's more regulation, and then people buy more guns again.
People have been buying guns en masse for decades, John.
That's not true.
Yes,
most people had one gun.
When I grew up, in our household, we had 1, 2, 3 shotguns, 2 rifles, 4 handguns in our house. And that was kind of par for the course for where I was growing up. When you went into somebody's house or looked in the back of their pickup truck, you expected to see guns. So it's, that's the problem.
But do you see that anymore?
This chicken little. Well,
but you don't see that anymore, do you?
No, you don't see people carrying them around because it's kind of stupid to put a gun in your car now because douchebags will steal your fucking gun out and go kill people with it. Right? And then you're responsible.
That never happened back then.
Well, no, because we didn't have this contentious society that we do now. We weren't as contentious back then, I think. I mean, well, people were using guns to go and roust out minorities, maybe, and there was crime going on, but it wasn't this whole, school shootings and things like this.
Yeah.
The times.
The school shootings exactly have to do more. No. The school shootings, and we talked about this a little bit off mic before we started the show. The school shootings have more to do with the over medication of society.
Sure, I agree with
that. Doing the more psychoactive, what is it? It's not psychoactive, psychotropic drugs being administered just freely.
And I can agree with that.
More now than they ever have. It has nothing to do with the tool that they're using to kill people.
Okay,
if somebody wants to kill someone, they're going to kill someone.
Okay, so but in that sense, aren't you defining a group of people that should not have guns?
No, because not all of them are like that.
If someone's fucked in the head from the drugs that they're taking, and it can be discovered.
Yeah, but not everyone's fucked in the head like that.
I understand that. That's not. Listen to the question. If someone's fucked in the head and it can prevent them from getting a gun and doing something stupid, is it not reasonable to try and stop them from getting a gun?
No. I don't think that. No, I don't think that.
So everybody should have a gun.
Just about everybody should have a gun. Just about.
See, you want to regulate it, and that's the thing.
I'm not against zero regulation. I'm against further regulation.
And that is, in my opinion, the hypocrisy of.
So it has to be all or nothing.
Advocates.
So it has to be all or nothing then.
Well, they holler about regulation, but they will also say that certain regulations are necessary. But if you do anything to tweak that, then all of a sudden you're trying to take our guns away. And I can promise you, for the last 100 and 200 years, nobody's having their guns taken away.
It's the trend that we're looking at.
What trend? It's supposed to be the
trend of more and more and more and more regulation.
Yep, more and more people have guns.
So the next thing on the chopping block, like I said, the next thing on the chopping block is semi-automatic, right? Which is going to leave you with maybe revolvers even though that can be argued as being semi-automatic, and then bolt-action rifles or lever-action rifles,
but when do you
and
actually
pump-action
think that's going to
shotguns.
happen,
That'll be all
John?
you'll be allowed to have.
When do you actually think?
Within the next 20 years maximum, if not before that.
Guess
maximum.
What? 40 years ago, the same argument was being made. They're going to take our guns away. They're going to take.
No.
People were fearing that they were going to have their shotguns taken away. Every gun in their house was going to go away. 40 years ago,
what I'm talking about.
Every time regulation comes into play, this is the same argument. Yet we still continue
and they had
to
the same argument that they're going to take our fully automatic weapons away. Well, look, that happened, right? Right? I mean, they took your fully automatic weapons away.
Yeah,
now, what's on the chopping block? The semi-automatic weapons. Well, yeah. Who needs to be able to fire, 17 rounds in 13 seconds or whatever?
And the gun proponents back in the day when that was happening were pissed off about it, but you still you have gun proponents to this day that were alive back then that say that it was a good idea to take those automatic weapons off the table. 20, 30 years later, whatever, it's okay now because it's proven to be a smart move.
Right, like Midget B said, shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. And so don't get me wrong, listen, those licenses that you have to buy in order to get fully automatic weapons are unconstitutional because of that phrase that he just said. Shall not be infringed. You cannot give a license for things that are a right. The only reason that it was declared constitutional was because it doesn't stop you from buying a gun. It just stops you from buying a certain type of gun, and that's been the Supreme Court's interpretation of it for the past however many years.
Right.
It's been.
But they're not going to get to semi-automatic weapons. They're not
they are. That's what they're trying to do. That's what people like David Hogg are trying to do. People who don't know anything about guns are trying to write legislation.
Right, that have no business right, that can't write legislation. They're just talking.
He can't write now,
David Hogg holds zero water in this country. Nobody gives a fuck what he says.
That's not bullshit. Bullshit.
There's not a goddamn person in Washington that gives a shit what he says when it comes to the vote on gun legislation.
Bullshit for one, bullshit, and secondly,
will buy them out.
Secondly, no bullshit. First of all, no, the NRA is not nearly as powerful as you think they are. They're not as powerful as you are being led to believe that they are. They don't do anything. They put a shit ton of
money into Trump's campaign, so they're not doing
not as much as other people. But also the other thing is with like David Hogg is that yes, he by himself is just talking, but it's the people who support him, people who don't know what the gun laws are already, people who don't or are not educated on guns or gun laws, don't know anything about them, are the ones who will be writing their representatives. Like you said before, you'd be surprised how many people do that, right? So they're gonna be the ones writing their representatives, putting pressure on them to do these things.
Right, and it's never.
And there you go. It's gonna happen. All right.
It won't because of the simple fact that the response to taking guns away from America, if it actually happened, if it was a forcible taking of guns away from America, then the revolution would start. That would be tyranny of the government, and that is what would kill off the Second Amendment and make a change in this country.
Which is why you would have to do it little by little.
Even
right, and that's the point. When people say they're coming for our guns, they don't mean.
Let me ask you this:
like, oh, tomorrow we're gonna send the SWAT team to everyone's house and take all their guns away. That's not what that means.
Did it stop when they banned automatic weapons? Did they go searching house to house to find automatic weapons and get them off the streets? No.
Honestly, I don't know. They probably did a gun buyback, is my guess. The mandatory gun buyback. No. We haven't. They just kind of grandfather them in because I've never met.
No, they just said they're illegal. So you only have repercussions if you get caught with it. If you use it somewhere, do something stupid. It's just like don't ask, don't tell. They didn't go out cleaning the streets.
Well, it's like the bump stocks, right? You have to.
They're not out cleaning the streets. They're not out there
I don't
taking
like
bump
that.
stocks from people and finding out who does and doesn't. They're not inspecting guns. That's tyranny.
Well,
That's
that's also unconstitutional though, because you can't make someone destroy their own property
right.
or take it without compensation.
Sure,
That is in the
exactly.
Constitution as well.
So all they
So
can
that
do
is
is
also
make it a crime to
unconstitutional.
use it. All they can do is make it a crime to use it.
Yeah.
And I can promise you, based on handguns, there are so many semi-automatic handguns out there, and handguns are
Every
not a
handgun is
target.
semi-automatic.
Not a Smith and Wesson.
What? Yes, it is. All
mean,
handguns are
like
semi-automatic.
the old 357, like the 357, is that considered a semi-automatic? Just
What, like a
because-
revolver? Like
yeah,
you
a
can't say a
revolver.
357. That's an
Well, a
ammunition
357. I'm
type.
thinking Dirty Harry, 357 Magnum revolver.
That's a
Is that
that's a
considered
revolver.
se-
That
is
is
it considered a
it
semi-automatic?
is. It's one
you sure?
squeeze of the trigger equals one round fired.
I thought the rapidity of how fast you can shoot it as well qualified.
You can
it.
it's as fast as you can pull
Is
the
that all it
trigger. You
is?
can
So
fire
every
it.
gun
Yeah.
is, so every handgun is
Yes.
a semi-automatic. Then you're saying
Every handgun,
that they
yes.
are actually that you think
People
that
are
there's
advocating
laws
for that.
in-
Yes, without knowing it.
but
Yes, they are advocating
people,
for that.
People advocating for shit doesn't matter in this day and age.
They're the
because-
people writing their
not
representatives.
when it comes
yes.
to guns, because the NRA
Yes.
will trump
Oh,
public
stop.
opinion
The
every
NRA.
single time. How many times over the years have we seen the NRA shut down potential legislation on guns? It is a
Yeah, because it's
status quo.
unconstitutional. Yes.
Okay,
Good-
John.
when they're
So you
unconstitutional,
want to whip
yes,
out
they
the
do.
Constitution. Let me ask you this. Fine. We'll keep low restrictions on access to guns as long as you sign one document. And that document says that if you're going to own a gun, then you are required by law on pain of treason to stand up as a militia because you own a gun, because that is built into the Second Amendment as well, so that we have a well-regulated militia. That is part of the Second Amendment. That was what it was intended for back in the day, was to protect this country from invasion. So if we want to go by the letter of the Second Amendment, let's do that. If you want to own a gun, you sign a waiver, a contract that says you will stand up and fight for your country should a militia be called.
No, I mean
ifs,
you
ands, or buts
can't.
about it.
No, I mean you can't force someone to be part of a militia just because they own a gun. But
Well,
I
if
mean,
you-
I would sign up for that. Yes, but no, I don't. I don't think that it should be required
So
to own a gun.
you don't think that being part of a militia, which is the purpose of the Second Amendment, part of the purpose
No,
of the
it's
Second
not.
Amendment, then why was it for a well-regulated militia? Was
A
very specific in
well-regulated
there.
militia being essential to what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a well-regulated militia being essential to the state, I think it is, or to the function of the state. You want to pull it up real quick?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Because that's the thing that kills me is like everybody's like, oh, it just says I get to own any gun I want.
Yeah, well, that's because the Supreme Court has ruled that. That's why. I forget what the exact case law was. I forget what the exact case law was. Maybe Midget B will be able to tell us.
Okay, so it says
He's pretty smart about that stuff.
a well-regulated militia being
Being
necessary
necessary.
to the security of a free state, the right
Right.
of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it means because we may need a militia, your right to bear arms will not be infringed upon because a militia is necessary to the security
Right.
of a free state. So
But
by
there's a
necessity,
case law in the Supreme Court that rules that it doesn't matter whether you're in a militia or not. The same law applies.
okay, you would never
And I
be
forget
in
what
a
it is.
militia until the need for a militia is called.
Right.
You would never be in one till
I
it's
wouldn't
necessary.
be in one, no.
You would not
I
fight
mean,
for your country because that's fucking un-American.
I'm not saying that. No. First of all, I would not fight for the government.
I didn't say the government.
I would fight for the people around me. Yes.
If your country was
people that I
being
care about.
invaded like it was, like we
Yes,
fought in
yeah.
the Revolutionary War, if we were being invaded, you would not stand up and fight the invaders?
Well, first of all, we weren't invaded in the Revolutionary
Okay,
War,
well,
and
but you
secondly, yes, I
understand,
would
we
though.
had foreign
But yes, I would.
At the
Yes,
point
yes,
that we
I would,
were
though,
at war,
yes.
we had foreign invaders coming into this
Yes.
country.
But yes, I
Right.
would.
So
I
that's
would do the
point.
best I could
and
do,
That's,
yeah.
and it states very clearly that a regulated militia being necessary. And that's the key there. Well regulated. Regulated militia.
But okay, but again, the Supreme
Necessity.
Court has already ruled your arguments are invalid.
Has already
Supreme
ruled
Court.
what? That you don't have to be in a militia to own a gun.
Right.
I get that. But
Right.
if you own
So
a gun,
that
you need
basically
to be
that
part
part
of the militia.
is irrelevant.
No,
And
it's
you are.
not. The
And you are,
reason-
just not officially.
But you don't have any responsibility to protect this country just because you own a gun. And I think
Right.
that that's a fair trade-off if you want looser gun control. The promise
I
that
mean,
you're
I
going to
would be
stand up
willing.
and use
I'd be
those
willing
guns
to
to
make that
protect this
compromise.
country.
I would be willing to make that compromise, but I can't speak for everyone else who owns guns. And I'm not going to try and infringe upon their right to own guns just because they don't want to be part of a militia.
I mean, let's be honest here, John. If you transport yourself back to that day and age, you and I both know that the Second Amendment was set up so that the country had a militia available.
Right, because they were
because
against having a standing army. Yes.
Right.
But we have a standing army now.
So we don't need
So
a
that's no
militia.
longer
So
necessary.
then doesn't that nullify the
No.
Second Amendment? Oh, wait.
No, it doesn't.
There is not. Those are not two different sentences.
I
That is
understand
one
there's a comma
full
between
sentence.
the two. Yes.
Right? So a well-regulated militia being
But
necessary
you are the
to
militia.
but it's not.
Even if there's not an official, even if there's not
But
like
it's
a
not
Florida
necessary
militia,
anymore. It's not
even if there's not a-
necessary.
but even if there's not a Florida militia, the second half still applies, and that's what the Supreme Court has ruled long time ago. And now I'm going to look it up because
But
the chat
again-
hasn't
but
told
again-
me what it is.
Yes, I understand that if
uh,
you're not in a militia, it doesn't infringe you, keep you from owning a gun. But nobody would ever be in a militia until the time comes, right? So,
Well, no,
that's
you would
kind of
have
a-
militia, or where you would go like on the weekends to train.
Well, that's the National Guard. That's not the militia.
Well, it is now, yeah, but it was the militia.
Yeah, but
No,
in the
with
present
National
day and
Guard,
age,
With the National Guard, it's oh fuck, it's I think it is 2 days. No, it's not 2 days a week. It's like 2 days a month, 6 weeks out of the year, or something like that. That you would train. Like it's really not that much. But hang on. So I'm trying to find the case law right now. We've got U.S. versus Cruikshank, 1876. The people's right to bear arms, like their rights of assembly and petition, existed long before the Constitution, is not in any manner dependent upon that instrument for its existence. This ruling also upheld that all able-bodied males are members of the militia, one of three such clear rulings. So there's that one, 1876.
hold on, touch that one again.
The people's right to bear arms, like the rights of assembly and petition, being the First Amendment, existed long before the Constitution.
Well, I just meant
and
that
is
last
not.
part where you said all able-bodied men. What?
Yeah, this ruling also upheld that all able-bodied men are members of the militia, one of three such clear rulings. But then we go on to 1895. Individuals have a right to possess and use firearms for self-defense. So there's that one.
Sure. Still.
So there's several rulings. 1914, the Supreme Court ruled that by implication, even resident aliens have the right to possess weapons such as pistols that may be used to be needed occasionally for self-defense. 1921, the Supreme Court decided that a person facing a deadly attack may use lethal force in his self-defense, adding detached reflection cannot be demanded in the presence of an uplifted knife. Interesting. What does that mean? Detached reflection cannot be demanded in the presence of an uplifted knife. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's saying if someone puts a knife up to you, you can shoot them. It's
Self-defense.
well, yeah. It's escalation of force. Supreme Court stated this is 1931. Near versus Minnesota, the Supreme Court stated that the great and essential rights of the people are secured against legislative as well as against executive ambition. They are secured not by laws paramount to prerogative, but by constitutions paramount to laws. I have no fucking clue what that means. God damn, that's a bunch of gobbledygook.
And you wonder why people don't understand gun control.
yeah, but I'm saying that was what 1931. Right. I mean,
I
there's
get that.
laws going way back saying that you don't need to be. So there were rulings that said you need to be part of the militia.
We've changed,
and then later on they overturned that. Yeah.
So we've changed the intent of the second opinion to suit the needs of gun owners.
The second opinion, yeah.
Or the Second Amendment. We've changed the intent of what the Second Amendment was truly doing. It was guaranteeing that there was some sort of army in this country because we didn't have a standing army. We don't have to have a militia anymore because we have a standing army.
Right.
So.
But again, the Supreme Court has ruled based on that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we don't need a militia, then we should amend
then we
the
don't
Second
need
Amendment
guns?
to take that in.
No,
Let me finish my sentence. We should amend the Second Amendment to take anything about the militia out. Because to me, that very specifically says, just like the ruling that every able-bodied man in this country is part of the militia, that if you own a weapon, you should be required to take up arms as a militia to protect this country. There is that's part of your rights.
I should. However, I don't agree that you should have to do that. But I do agree that you should.
Yeah, I don't love how I don't love how people lean on the Second Amendment, and because there are people that just cherry pick it. They ignore that first half of it, and ignore the fact that there was an intent to that Second Amendment.
According to the Supreme Court, that's irrelevant now.
Well, I understand that. Like I said, gun owners, you have to appease people who want guns. So this idea, I mean, to me, it sounds like the Supreme Court has been loosening the Second Amendment for people to own guns far more than any regulation is impeding people from getting their hands on guns.
That's not true.
Really? Because you've just given me examples where they've made the Second Amendment read properly for Joe Blow to have a gun. There's no longer any question.
A gun.
Yeah, you can have a gun.
Doesn't say that you can have. Doesn't say that you can have an automatic weapon. Doesn't say that you can have a nuclear weapon. Doesn't say that you can have mustard gas. Doesn't say that you can have any of these other weapons.
You know what else it doesn't say? Equivalency to the army.
Well, no, but that was the point.
Where do they pull that shit out of their ass?
That's not out of their ass. That's from. Oh man, is it Thomas Paine or is it? I know it's one of those.
Is it in the Constitution?
Well, no, it's not in the Constitution.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody fucking says. So there's nothing in the Second Amendment that says what kind of guns you're allowed to have. It just says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. No, we're not stopping you from having guns, but we will tell you which ones you can and cannot have. There is no reason for you to be stocked up as a military because we don't need a militia. So regulating what kind of guns people can have in their hands, what do you need for protection? Do you need an AK-47 to protect yourself in your house?
Do you need a handgun? Or should you just use a BB gun? I think the
handgun is the best alternative to protect.
Or do you just need? I mean, you can just use a BB gun. I mean, you don't need a handgun.
No,
you don't need it. Come on, why do you need a handgun?
I prefer a pellet gun
when you could just use a BB gun or a pellet gun.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't need a gun. I have a pellet
gun. Just pump it up 10 times and it'll be fine.
No, mine just cock, load, pop. I don't even have to pump it. So and I can fuck somebody up with a pellet rifle. I can even make myself. I can even get slugs, hollow point pellets for it.
You can't get hollow point pellets.
Want to bet me? You want to bet me that I can't get a hollow point? I can't get hollow point pellets for my rifle.
You mean just hollow pellets? Is that what you're talking about?
They're like a extended head that's a hollow.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That will burst on impact and spread the kill. It is what it is. But when it's all said and done, we don't need a militia anymore.
We don't.
and
I,
there are
I
no
think that we should still have militias.
There is nothing
I'm
in the
still.
Second Amendment that gives you the right to own any weapon that you want. It just
Yeah,
says
but
that
that's
you
the
can
problem.
have them. It says you can have guns. So I think it's fine for any governmental body to determine what is allowed and what is not, because it does not tell you in that amendment that that shouldn't happen. And especially when it says, if the spirit of the amendment is there, it is about having a well-regulated militia, and there's the key. Nobody wants to talk about
Well,
that
see, I'm
first
fine
part of
with
the
there also
sentence
being. I'm
because
also fine with there being a militia. I'm fine with states having their own militias. A
guns are
state-sponsored militia is a great idea.
Guns aren't
Yeah.
machines. A machine can operate on its own.
No, guns are machines.
A
That's not
machine
true.
gun is.
No, oh my God, machine guns. Can machine guns operate on their own? No.
I like to think of guns more as mechanical Turks. It's a mechanical.
It's a machine.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
moving
mechanical Turk.
parts. It's parts moving in order to create an effect. They are
Okay.
machines.
Yeah, if you want to qualify it like that, so is a fucking grenade launcher. So is a nuclear warhead. So when do we
Yeah.
stop?
Well, like I said, I'm willing to compromise.
Are
Leave
you?
semi-automatic weapons alone. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. But this idea that
It's fine for you, but it's not fine for other people.
no, I just said what you said was fine. Don't touch my side. I said fine.
Don't touch semi-automatics. Yeah.
I said fine. I agreed with you.
You did. I'm saying other people don't.
And those people don't fucking matter because the NRA
No, they
will always
do
stop
matter.
that
No,
legislation
that is not true.
John,
That is not
John, they
true.
stop legislation from going through regularly. They sway votes, and you cannot say the NRA has not
because
been
they're
doing this for
correct.
years.
Because they're correct.
No, they are not.
Yes, they are correct. Oh my
I'm sorry.
God.
Then tell me again how it's unconstitutional to tell people they cannot have an automatic weapon. How is that unconstitutional? There's nothing in the Constitution that says it's okay.
Well, yeah, so that's why they offer a license for it or a permit or whatever loophole they have to do to get around it.
Regulation
right,
that was going to take more regulation that's going to take our guns away.
They can have it. You
Okay.
can buy an automatic weapon, but
So
you have to
then,
go
in
through
other
the right
words,
loopholes.
nobody's stopping you from getting your gun. So
Not at the
guns aren't being
moment.
taken away. Not at the moment. This
Oh my
argument's
God.
but John, you're making the same argument that's been going on for years, and it still hasn't happened. And we're no
It's because
closer
it's
to
true.
It. We're no closer to
No,
it.
we're way closer to it.
Then
There, you
why
can get a lot
why
less
does the
guns now
number
than
of
you could
gun-
40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
So
There's a lot.
the types of gun matter as opposed to the amount
Yes.
of guns.
Shall not be infringed is the important aspect of it. Yes.
The right to keep and bear arms it shall not be infringed.
Shall not be infringed.
And it's not.
Yeah.
Nobody is stopping you from having weapons. You can have guns. But you can't have a fucking grenade launcher. You can't have a rocket launcher without specific licensing.
All right.
That's the part that I don't understand why nobody gets. It's like the Constitution sets up regulation for guns. It says it in the amendment that the militia that is intended for those guns needs to be regulated.
Stop with the militia bullshit. That's already been debunked. Stop.
No, just because they avoided the
and listen,
language.
I also have to take a piss, and we've been at 2 hours and 15 minutes now. Time to go. But yeah, you're wrong.
No, I'm not.
And the chat will tell you why, and I'll tell you why. You're wrong.
So, but see, look, even J. Edgar points it out right there.
Leave it to the states.
No, shall not. Yes, who will infringe
Shall
on
not
your gun
be
rights? That's infringement itself. And
but they can't supersede the Constitution. That's the point of the Constitution.
Nothing that's
is that those cannot be infringed. Okay. Yeah, exactly. What
states can regulate, but the federal government can't. That's the that's what I don't understand.
They're not infringing, but let's get out of here though.
It doesn't.
We're being tedious.
You can't explain.
We're arguing in circles.
You can't.
I've explained it the best that I can.
Regulation on a state level.
I've explained it the best I can.
Why is it okay for states to regulate guns but not the federal government? You can't explain that.
The 10th Amendment, of course they can.
No.
The 10th Amendment leaves anything that's not up to the federal government. That is not the Constitution does not explicitly give to the federal government is left up to the states. That is the 10th Amendment.
Regulation is infringement. Regulation is infringement.
To an extent, yes.
No, period. Taxes are theft. Okay. Regulation is infringement.
Yes,
whether it's a state level or government level.
All right. Well, I gotta piss really bad, and we gotta go.
You gotta stop drinking so much.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. I had to deal with your ass tonight.
It is what it is. I mean, you want to talk about guns? I mean, it's just it's a bullshit argument that people make. We've got more guns
right.
in this country.
Your argument is totally bullshit.
We are more well armed than any other country in this world. Nobody's having any issue getting their hands on guns. Not much longer. Good luck. You know as well as I do, it'll never happen. They can't take our guns. We'll overthrow the government. That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Second Amendment does for you.
Yes, that's the point of it. To overthrow a tyrannical government.
Right. And when they get there, we'll be there to stop them with our guns. Because we've got plenty.
Hopefully.
We've got plenty. More than enough. But anyway, all right, we're out of here.
Yeah.
And thanks for chatting, folks. And thanks for listening to us argue. I know John's always wrong, but
right, of course. Naturally.
But anyway, all right, you guys have a good night. John, we'll talk to you later. I'll see you in a few.
We will. See you guys.
Hey, can they find us anywhere?
Nope. All right, yeah, fine. They can find us at Twitter. On Twitter at the Gen Gap P. And you can find us on Discord. Links both in the description. So go click on stuff. It'll be fun, I promise. Also hit like. Because if you don't, God will fill your bed with snails. No one likes that. Don't do that.
I like snails. They taste good.
Yeah, I don't think you want them in your bed, though.
Well, I'll just take them.
Crawl over you all slimy.
You just got to gather them up and take them to the kitchen.
Yeah.
Got to cook them. All right, peace out, folks. Have yourselves a good night.
Yep, see you guys.